Did your office or any other office pressure Commissioner Luckey or negotiate with Commissioner Luckey to release specific information about those killings to help advance gun legislation? Would those conversations have been appropriate, and do you still have confidence in the Commissioner to lead the RCMP?
Absolutely not. On the pressure, we did not put any undue influence or pressure. It is extremely important to highlight that it is only the RCMP, it is only police that determine what and when to release information.
Canada's largest mass shooting is quickly morphing into what may be one of the country's largest scandals, and it involves the RCMP, the Liberal government, and our trusted institutions being corrupted by Trudeau. That's why Rebel News is sending myself and my colleague Lincoln Jay all the way out to Nova Scotia so that we can bring you firsthand on-the-scene reports from the official inquiry into the RCMP's response to the mass shooting. It's also why we are asking for help from those of you who want to be informed by journalists who are completely independent from the government and who are going to be there where the news is unfolding instead of sitting behind a screen. So if that's you, please open up another browser tab and help us recoup the cost to bring you the reports on the Trudeau-RCMP scandal at firelucky.com. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and like so many Canadians, I am shocked about the information that continues to pour out from the ongoing public inquiry into Canada's worst mass shooting. That is the April 2020 massacre, where denturist Gabriel Wortman disguised himself as a police officer and went on a killing spree that took the lives of 22 people in Nova Scotia. But that may not have been the only person at the time disguised as someone who is supposed to be serving and protecting Canadians, but wasn't. Evidence that's poured out of the public inquiry, which is called the Mass Casualty Commission, suggests that while Canadians were in shock and in grief, and the victims' families were preparing to bury their slayed loved ones, the Trudeau Liberal government and their pet RCMP Commissioner Brenda Luckey were busy colluding and scheming and plotting on how best to exploit the massacre to further the Liberals' political gun ban agenda against law-abiding firearm owners. Were they hatching some sort of sinister scheme to deflect from the RCMP's failure to act on information that they had about Wortman by pivoting to scapegoat a law-abiding group that the killer wasn't even a part of? I say this or ask this question because every single firearm in Wortman's possession was illegal. This scandal is a disgrace. Documents released by the Commission last Tuesday detail Commissioner Luckey as pressuring Nova Scotia Mounties during a meeting to prematurely release certain details about the guns that Wortman used during his rampage, even though the Mounties told her that if they did so, it would risk damaging the investigation. Now, why would Luckey insert herself that way, you ask? Well, according to the notes of Superintendent Darren Campbell, a respected member of the RCMP, Luckey expressed disappointment during a meeting with the Mounties for not obeying her politically driven guidance. She had apparently made a promise to the Minister of Public Safety at the time, Bill Blair, and Prime Minister Trudeau's office that such details would be released, and that promise was apparently linked to the Liberal government's pending gun ban legislation at the time. The release of details that could compromise the investigation could help the Liberals win their gun control agenda. But was Luckey seriously willing to sacrifice the investigation and the little bit of justice the families deserved just to help the Trudeau Liberals? The meeting took place 10 days after the mass murder, and 3 days after that, Trudeau regulated the following.
Effective immediately, it is no longer permitted to buy, sell, transport, import, or use military-grade assault weapons in this country.
But that's not all. On Friday, we learned, thanks to the Commission, that the government, the Department of Justice to be exact, originally withheld 4 of Superintendent Campbell's notes that detailed the allegations of political interference. And this is despite them being subpoenaed to release all of the RCMP's files on the investigation, which means 2 years later, the government is still throwing a wrench into this investigation of Canada's deadliest shooting. Now, of course, you can find out the details about everything I just said, including the Department of Justice's response to that, by clicking on the written article for this report that's linked below in the description. But my question is, should be everybody's question as well, is what are we going to find out next? And what, if anything, is still in hiding? And since this involves Trudeau and his buddy at the head of the RCMP, can we really trust his state broadcaster, the CBC, to cover the findings transparently? That's why myself and Lincoln J are teaming up to cover this week's proceedings for you in person in Halifax. You'll hear what happens right away through our live tweet coverage of the proceedings, and you'll also get video reports to fill you in with more context of what's going down. And you'll also learn what we learn as we learn it, as we go through the communities that were directly affected from this traveling massacre. It's taken an independent public inquiry to make sure that you've become aware of any of this Trudeau-RCMP scandal. And it should take an independent news outlet like Rebel News to make sure that you're fully aware of everything about it. Unlike over 95% of the media in Canada who take money from the Trudeau government's media bailout, we are only accountable to you. But we also rely on you as well. So that is why we are asking you for your help, not to profit off of this important story, but simply to cover the expenses involved in covering it, which is for things like economy flights, meals on the go, modest hotel accommodations, transportation, including gas and a rental car to get to and from the communities and back and forth from the airport. And in total, we're estimating the cost to be just shy of $5,500. So if you can please help us out with recouping those costs, you can go to our special website called firelucky.com to help us do so. And you guessed it, with a URL like that, you can also sign our petition there while you're at it to demand that the head of the RCMP, Brenda Lucki, be fired from her position as commissioner to make room for someone Canadians can trust to not be influenced by political agendas ever, let alone during something as devastating as the country's worst mass shooting. Who knows, maybe it will even be to make room for someone like Superintendent Darren Campbell. I'm Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. Lincoln and I are honored to be going to Halifax to bring you reports you can trust on the Trudeau-RCMP scandal. Thank you for everybody who is heading to firelucky.com to help us cover the costs to do so.